We're taking a little break from our Matthew series this morning. We do these, what we call Values Sundays, every once in a while, just to kind of heat up the core values of our church. And those values look like this. So there's about 15 of them or so, and we kind of work through these. We've probably done, 6 or 8 of these sermons over the past few years. And if anybody has any questions about any of these specifically, you can definitely talk to me. I like to take these sermons and talk about these as the senior pastor of the church and one of the elders. I just have a real heart for these values. These come from many, many years of doing ministry together as a family of churches. And we kind of say that our statement of faith is Jesus is Lord. And we do that on purpose. And we've had people, who have felt a little frustration over that through the years as they go to our website and try and fit us into, a box that they may feel comfortable in. And so there's definitely some value in that. I'm not knocking other churches who have that a little more lined out. We really want to be very inclusive of, different denominations. That's why we consider ourselves an undenominated church body. And so we really try and rally under that, just this concept, simple Christianity, this idea that Jesus is Lord. And if that is the common denominator, we can figure out the rest, because there's some very good arguments for all the different kind of nuances within a lot of statements of faith. There's a lot of really good arguments. We're getting ready to do a study on women in leadership. And one of the books that we're reading within that, there's 4 authors, 2 on kind of each side of the discussion, the egalitarian approach and the complementarian approach. And all 4 authors started off the book by saying, look, I can see what they're saying. I understand their view. There's a strong case for both approaches. And so we use this very specifically to kind of help guide our thought process. As a pastoral team, we think about these values as we're picking sermon series, setting up our small groups. Everything kind of comes back to this for us. And while we don't really have a formal membership process, we really encourage you to align yourself with these values. If you're going to be a person who comes here and is involved, it really makes a lot of sense. This is who we want to be. And as you get more and more involved in our church, our hope is that these values really deepen in you. And that you see yourself not as just a person who comes on Sunday morning, but as an active participant in the list that you see here. So the value that we're going to be discussing today is humble service. That's why I've got that bolded there. It's bold up there on the screen. So that's why we're going to talk about that today. And there's a reason we paired these words together, because you can have kind of heartless and mindless, kind of a taskless approach to serving the body, right? And probably all of us in different ways, different times, have come into the church body and felt this kind of approach. We're just going to come, we're going to do some things, we're going to go on. And you can easily look at all you've done and then start to compare yourself to what you think others have done or are doing. And there can be some frustration that starts growing from that. And that approach can actually end up really damaging the body. You've got a bunch of people doing a bunch of things, a bunch of stuff is getting done, but you end up with disunity and division as people place themselves above one another instead of serving the way Christ did, which is, and we're going to talk some more about this idea of a power under approach. And so let's just do a quick heart check and let you kind of think about this idea in your life and what this looks like for you. You know, when you come into the church, are you naturally thinking about, how you can serve the body and what's your heart posture in that? What's your attitude? Or is there this kind of comparison game that starts in your mind and makes you start thinking a certain way about certain people or certain things that are going on within the body? So Philippians 2, 3, and 4 just says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Powerful thought, right? And very, very opposite of what I think we naturally give ourselves to, what we naturally lean towards. So to put first other people means what? That we have to put ourselves second or last, somewhere outside of that initial look. And so as you would probably know if you've been around here a while, I really am a big fan of the one-point sermon. I think it's a way for you guys to really easily remember the thought, go away with it, kind of think about it. And it's really ludicrous. It makes no sense the amount of time I spend coming up with these 1 points. But I'm just going to keep it real simple today. Here's my 1 point. Go low. Okay? So not YOLO. That's a different concept. This is go low. And again, just this idea for you to think about in your walk and really what's at the underpinning and the foundation of who you are in Christ. Okay, so if we consider Philippians 2, 3, and 4, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourselves. There has to be kind of this constant thought, this constant idea that in all these different situations, relationships that I find myself in, I have to position myself. And again, I have to think about this. I have to act on this. It's not that if I'm try hard enough or study the Word long enough that this is just going to become super easy. It gets better. It does as you understand the Spirit continues to work in you. But that's the point I want you to walk away with this morning. Just go low. And so for me, there's a battle that just happens every day in me between the Spirit and my flesh. This is every morning, wake up. One of the first things I pray, I've told you guys this morning, is just asking God to help me to be His man, to give me strength through the power of the Spirit to tackle the things that are coming in my life every day. But no matter how hard I work on that or how long I pray about that, that thought going back to Cain and Abel always pops up. That sin is always crouching at my door. And then there's this thought behind that almost kind of wraps this animalistic thing around it that says it desires to have you. And when we hear Satan described as a roaring lion seeking to devour, we get this imagery that as hard as we try and the best intentions that we have, that this always comes up. And I see this battle going on in others around me and in fellow believers and then the people I interact with in the world. In the pre-engagement counseling I do these days, a lot of it, I should say, centers around what it means to have a covenant marriage. This idea of partnering with God for the betterment of the other person. So, see, that's different than contract marriage, again, which just means as long as you make me happy, as long as you check these boxes in my task list, then I'll be good. I'll be committed to this marriage. Covenant is very different from that. It says that I'm seeking to put the other person's needs above my own. And so I'm called in my marriage to consider Christy's needs ahead of mine. And this is just counter to the way that the world sees marriage, or really any relationship. It typically revolves around whether or not people make you happy. Well, what happens when they don't? Okay, because it's not if they don't make you happy, it's just a matter of time when they stop checking that checkbox. What happens then? And so much of the marriage counseling that I do comes back to just a common problem. And it's just selfishness. It's just selfishness. And you can dig down in your own thoughts, in your own relationships, and think about this. I see this in my business interactions. I can just sense from other people this positioning to kind of be above or ahead of where I am. And there's often these double standards and one-sided offers that come as I approach these different situations in my businesses. And so much of what drives people's idea of happiness is just money. How much can they make? How much can they secure themselves? And sadly, this isn't immune to the church. This same thought process has crept into the church. And we see this, very proliferately in the church body today. I talk with Christian leaders who seem to have God all figured out. And that in and of itself blows my mind. But they neglect the needs of the individuals around them. They seek to be right instead of this idea of seeking to kind of move yourself lower and lower. Some of you are familiar with this. Oh, is this working? Maybe? There we go. Some of you guys are familiar with this clothing brand. For the longest time, I thought it was Hiki, okay? Anybody else see a K in there? Nope, only me? Okay, cool. This is a clothing brand that started over in Hawaii somewhere. I was reading a little bit about it last night. And it's just this concept, he is greater than I, right? And on the surface, that makes a lot of sense, right? You can see it, and you'll see people wearing these shirts, bumper stickers, all these different things that people are trying to promote this. But what about everyone is greater than I? Makes for a longer bumper sticker, right? They'd have to redo the logo. But that's the concept that we're talking about here. It's easy for me to settle in on God, creator of the universe, being greater than I. Me? Greater than me. But what about the bum on the street? That creates something different. What about your annoying manager at work? Or the person who cut you off on the road? Can you see them as greater than you? Or the person on the other end of the political spectrum from you? We kind of naturally go to this deal of calling people names and getting mad and chastising them. But is that what we're supposed to do? Is that how we're supposed to consider other people? And I'm sure you feel this same tension between your flesh and the challenge of living in humble service to those people around you. This is this human condition we've talked about a lot of times. Think back to the last conflict you had in your marriage, or with your parents, or with friends, or something like that. Most likely it had something to do with one or both of you just being selfish, trying to put your needs and your desires ahead of the other person, feeling like you deserve something from someone based on fill in the blank, right? We have all these things that we naturally come up with in our mind. And it's not that those issues don't need to be worked through, they do, but how does their mistreatment of you change the way that you interact with them? That's a tough one. And again, we're going to talk about Jesus here in a second and the example that he set for us, because we're kind of in the business of being mistreated and then withholding love to punish the other person. Right? That's kind of our natural reset. Instead of what Christ does in laying his life down for those who mistreat him. And we all know what that's like to just be selfish. Again, the temptation is just this basic instinct. And so we're confronted with that same choice Adam and Eve faced all the way back in the garden. And there's this illustration of the two trees that we've talked about a lot along the way. And is Matt Carruthers in here? No, he's out of here? He's in jam, okay. He always makes fun of Ronnie because whenever Ronnie's describing this, he'll say, there's the one tree, and then he uses his hands. Anyway, okay, I was going to call him out for that. So we have this tree of life, which represents God's way, and you can kind of see through the blurriness some of the things that brings. And then the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the way I want to do it, and some of the things that come from that, and the things that we have to guard against. And so, again, this is a concept that goes all the way back to the garden and a basic challenge that we have that's set in front of us. Okay, so the overall story of the Bible really points us to how to deal with all of this, okay? How to deal with our self-centeredness. Matthew 20, this is Jesus talking. Listen to this. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus defines here for us, really redefined for us, what greatness looks like. For his time, but really for all time, to show us this upside-down kingdom model. And he teaches us this new model of leadership that instead of seeking positions and having power over people, we're to engage with people in a power-under approach. And it starts with the heart that longs to seek others or to see others do good. You know, again, as I go through some of these, I want you to just think about kind of where you are in this process and where God has you and what he's teaching you here. You know, would you say you have a heart that really longs to see other people do good? Somewhere in the past few years, I kind of caught myself listening to the story of somebody that I was talking to and them telling me about something really cool that had happened in their life. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember going, wow, that's like life-changing stuff. And I remember there's like this jealousy that was kind of in me, you know, as I listened to that. And I remember thinking, gosh, that is not good. How can I counter this? And so I really tried to, when I start using the phrase, you know, I'm really glad that happened to you. I'm really happy for you. Something along those lines. When I hear people telling me great things that happen in their life, I really have to get my mind in that direction. And then I find that my spirit follows as well. And I can really get behind the idea of people succeeding and doing well in different things and not feeling that jealousy that I think kind of naturally comes from, just our human side and our flesh. And again, that's why I think it just starts with this heart of a desire to see other people do good. You know, this idea of a power under leadership is where you don't micromanage and nitpick, but instead you empower and absorb. Because things are going to go wrong, right? That just happens. Bad things are going to happen. And so when those things happen and those kind of, so to speak, those particles collide with you, do you then create this more energy in this bigger kind of negative situation? Or do you absorb that and try and understand and wrap the gospel around the different things that are happening in your life and trying to set an example for the people that are around you? Power under leaders listen. Okay, they listen and then they speak with words seasoned by the gospel. And in this model of leadership, there's ecstatic praise for the things that are going on and the good stuff that's happening, but then honest feedback for the places where, there needs to be change or help. And the power under leader is always casting a vision of what the people they're leading are capable of, especially if they don't see it in themselves. And so you may be hearing this and thinking, okay, well, I'm not in a leadership position. This section might not really apply to me. And I would tell you that in Matthew 28:18-20, we are given this great commission to go and lead people. I think that's a leadership passage that tells us that in our lives, we're supposed to lead other people into the gospel. And so we're called to this approach. And we're called to this approach, and I wanted to use this kind of like a little bit of a brutal picture of Jesus to kind of in your mind paint for you what it cost him to lead like this. Because again, we want comfort. We intentionally, I see this in my natural parenting styles. I see it in other people's parenting styles. We try and protect. If we could wrap our kids in bubble wrap and just keep them there all their lives, that would be the best thing. But is it? What if the gospel costs them something significant? What if it costs them friendships? What if it costs them their jobs? What if it costs them their lives? Would it be okay? And so again, we stare at this brutal picture of our Lord who was broken for doing what we're talking about doing. And this is the model that we have for us, each and every one of us, that this kind of power under leadership is what we're called to. So we have to get comfortable with that. We have to get comfortable with sacrifice. Sacrifice of time, resources, personal comfort. When's the last time you were uncomfortable in one of these areas? And that's tough. That's tough. We live in a society that's all about comfort. But I'll just tell you, we can't be so soft. We have to look for those opportunities to create sacrifice and then see what God does with that. He'll show up and do his part, I promise. And we're steady building these little comfort zones when we're being called out of those, I think, constantly. So there's some other scriptures to consider here. Philippians 2:3, I've already read that one to you. 1 Peter 5:5-6. In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. And then Galatians 5:13, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. And so again, the overall narrative here is pointing us to how to deal with all this, Okay, so what does this value look like played out in your life? I want you to think of this in terms of the different relationships you have. And let's just talk first about this relationship of husband and wife. And even for you, those of you in here who are single right now, I think this is good for you to hear and to think through. And I think it first starts with just going to, are you honoring the covenant? Are you honoring the marriage covenant? And you really have to make sure that this is solid in your mind, because then the other things kind of start to fall in place. But I'll never forget sitting in a marriage class probably 10 years ago or so, and we had invited Mark and Cini Royal over to share at this class. And I can picture right where Cini and Mark were sitting in my kind of my entryway at that time, talking to this group. And Cini was talking about covenant and the idea of covenant, what that looks like in her life. And she said, every morning I get up and I pray for Mark. And I pray, and autocomplete on Google, like my mind auto-completed, I pray that God changes him to be the person I need him to be. I mean, it's just natural autocomplete. And instead what she said is she prays for Mark that she can be changed to be the person that he needs her to be. I was like, what? Mind-blowing concept. And so for you husbands and wives in here, consider that prayer for your spouse. Not that they change, but that God works on you to change you to be the person that will draw them closer to him, honoring the covenant. Look to give, expecting nothing in return. Communicate with kindness and respect, even when you disagree. There's this concept of just bringing Jesus into your conflict. If he's in the middle of that, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be challenges, and you can work through them, but do it in a way that really honors the other person and honors your commitment to Christ. Be your spouse's biggest fan. Forgive easily and be thankful. I put this one last because that slips my mind a lot. I'll catch myself sometimes just thinking about Christy or, what's going on with her and all this stuff. And I just get this overwhelming sense of thankfulness that she's my wife, that she's my covenant partner. Perfect? No. Neither of us get to do that. Neither of us get to boast that. But we're committed to covenant. And what about as a parent? I think this is important for us. We have a lot of young families in here. And I talked last weekend at a little parenting seminar down in Garland. And this was kind of my first point because I was talking about the importance of raising your kids in community. And one of the things that I challenged that group with was just this idea of leading by example. And this is still, my kids are all 20 plus, 20 to 27. But I feel like this is still one of my primary responsibilities as a parent, to set an example for them. What do your kids see when they look into your life? What would they say you get really excited and fired up for? Is it the kingdom? Is that the first thing that would come back to their mind? The idea of serving other people, loving other people well? Or is it a sports team? And if so, there's challenges there. There's things that need to be fixed. You should be setting the tone in godliness and Christ-centeredness. Too many times the most immature person in the home is the parents. It's not the kids. And again, that's a challenge for us all to really think about that. To invest time, again, at all ages. This isn't just something when they're little, but for you who have adult children, think about that. And again, I'm just investing time in them. Apologize and admit mistakes. I remember looking back on my upbringing and just not being able to remember my parents apologizing ever. Maybe they did. I don't have a great memory anyway, so maybe they did. But I think that's a big thing for us, to teach our kids and model for them what it looks like. And then the last thing I have here is just to cast a vision for your kids, living lives in the kingdom. To start from a very early age, talking about what it looks like to live a life in the kingdom. And, my greatest hope for my kids and for my family is that there will be generational commitment to Christ. I don't want it to just be me or my kids. I want my kids' kids and my kids' kids' kids and on down the line till the coming of Christ for them to be committed. I want that far beyond wealth. Right? Again, you hear a lot of people talk about that. They talk about this idea of generational wealth and setting up something for their kids. But all you have to do is look at the results of that to hopefully be turned off by that. It's disgusting to see what these trust fund kids do and the lives that they lead. I don't want that for my kids. I want to create something that, leads on until the coming of Christ. So you have to cast a vision for your kids to do that. If you're not doing that, you need to have those conversations. Paint a picture for them of what lifelong discipleship looks like. And then also in friendships. Be available for your friends. We're just busy. We're busy people. And that's one of the things that kind of irritates me when I'm talking to somebody and I'm trying to set up time and they say, well, I know you're really busy. And they're being sweet. It's nothing that they're doing wrong. But my thought is, I'm never too busy for somebody in the kingdom. I would skip all of my work stuff if the kingdom calls. And so you have to be available for them and then give godly advice. A lot of times we give advice that we see on TikTok or we see in kind of these different worldly places. That's horrible advice. Give godly advice. And if you don't know what to say to give godly advice, get with somebody who can help you think through that. And you can tell them in the moment, you know what, let me think about that. And I'm going to get back to you. And this happens in the parenting relationship and in the relationship with your spouse too. That you have to really think about the advice that you're giving. Again, have healthy conflict by bringing Jesus into it. Iron sharpens iron. Sparks are going to fly. You're going to have conflict with people in here. People aren't always going to say things that you agree with. So what are you going to do? Just get mad and stomp off? Don't do that. This is a family. This is the family of God. We're going to have conflict, and with Christ as our denominator, there's nothing that we can't work through. Nothing that we can't work through. I would say be trustworthy and reliable. Celebrate your friend's success and really pray for them. And then think through these other relationships in your life. What does this look like in your workplace to be a power under leader? To be a person who takes the gospel into these different places with this kind of like go low mentality, that there's nothing beneath you. The stuff that no one else wants to do, that's what you're going to do. And you're not going to step in and into that saying, look at me and look how humble I am. That ruins the whole effort, right? But those opportunities are popping up all around you in your workplace, in your neighborhood. I came up with this little rap. Now you have to beatbox for me. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't do it. Feel yourself getting frustrated with so-and-so? Go low. Okay, that's all I got. Okay, sorry. That's the extent of my rap. Okay, last point. That was good, see? See, now you're going to remember this. 5 years from now, you're going to be like, remember that time JVR rapped? It was horrible. But it was go low, so we're going to go with that. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like for us as we let this play out in the life of Wiley Northeast. Okay, the first one I had here as I was kind of thinking through this is just show up. Just show up. So when you get up on Sunday morning, you're trying to think about going to church, who do you think first about? You think first about yourself? Do I feel like going? See, hopefully you can see just right through that thought process the problem with that. There's times to miss, okay? There's times to miss. But are you getting up in the morning? Are you thinking about what you can give to the body by being here? Because it's the body that suffers when people just don't show up. The body needs you as much as you need the body. And that's, again, this concept that gets lost on us sometimes. And don't come in here looking at punching a clock, right? We need you to be actively involved in the body. We need you to be looking for opportunities to grow friendships and looking for opportunities to serve people. I was thinking the Avatar movies. Some of you guys have seen those. A lot of you guys have seen those. You know where that little weird-looking hairy thing connects with the other person? You know what I'm saying? It's called the Sehelu, okay, if anybody's wondering. Okay, but I looked it up. I was like, what is that? Okay, so it's a mutual bond where the souls and minds between the two entities pursue a common goal. That sounds like what we're doing here on Sunday morning, right? Okay, so we need that. We need you to show up. Just a couple of kind of practical things that I set for myself. I try and make 90% of church things that are going on. That's my goal, 90%. Okay, so that means that I'm probably going to miss 4 to 5 times. I'm going to miss church on Sunday morning 4 to 5 times a year. And that's what I shoot for. And then within that, the other kind of rule that I have for myself is I never want to miss 2 Sundays in a row. It's happened before. Like probably 3 or 4 years ago, I went to visit my grandmother and something wonky happened and I ended up having to miss 2 Sundays in a row. So it's going to happen, right? These aren't these like rules where I'm better with God if I show up 90% of the time. Stop that. Throw that garbage out of your mind. It's not about that. That's this whole heart thing that we're talking about, is that it starts with the heart. So for me, those are the goals that I try and set. I want to be here 90% of the time, and I want to never miss 2 Sundays in a row. And then come looking what you can give, not just what you can get. You know, so many times we come in, and it's okay to expect something out of the body. That's okay. That's good. But don't come in just thinking about that. Be thinking about what you can give to the body. You should not be here with the mindset to be served. And again, this kind of goes in to my next one, is to have the mindset that Jesus is enough. So we live in this like consumerism age, you know, where we just consume and consume and consume, and we always have to be entertained, and it always has to be a little bit better, a little bit fancier, a little bit flashier than whatever the last time we consumed whatever it was. So you have to have the mindset that Jesus is enough. The gospel doesn't need laser lights and smoke machines. Jesus on the cross is enough, period. And so when you come in here with that mindset, you're not so worried about if they sang the songs you like or the preaching was good or bad. Right? You're in the mindset of, I'm here to serve. Humble service. Go low. What can I do to help? How can I bolster this body? How can I grow the body of Christ as a whole? Right? And that's the mindset. And I have no idea where we ever got this idea that we have to keep coming up with the latest and greatest worship ideas and all the right sermon examples and these super polished speakers and sneakers with preachers. And if you come in here and you have a heart focused on Jesus, when you leave every Sunday, you'll be blown away. You'll just be blown away. You'll walk in here with this heart that's just craving to just consume the goodness of God. Next to last thing here, identify your spiritual gifts and then figure out where you can use them. We don't need a bunch of JVRs running around. We sure don't need a bunch of Melissas running around, right? Each person has their own gifts, their own talents. We need you. We need you. And we're probably not going to come asking and begging all the time for you to do something. We might. Especially if you pipe up and get critical about something, you'll probably find yourself leading whatever the effort is to make that better. And so just fair warning there. But we need you to jump in and serve with a humble heart, right? We need you to jump in and serve and identify those spiritual gifts and then see where you can use them. Imagine if we all did that. Imagine if we all came in with that heart and that approach. And certainly there's a lot that just kind of low-hanging fruit you can do. You know, we have meal trains, we have opportunities to help set up and tear down at church, jumping on different service opportunities that are offered. So, and one that I'll just throw out real quick that I want you guys to be thinking about is the good folks over at North Point that we were talking to a few months ago about maybe, meeting in their building. That relationship is continuing to just get stronger and stronger. So that did not die. There's no animosity there. It's all good stuff. There's lots of really good things going on there. They have a food pantry that they run out of that church called Five Loaves, and it's impressive. Like those people are having an impact on our community. They're doing a lot of really good stuff. And so as we think about these ideas of like humble service and what it looks like to get plugged into the body, be thinking about that one. I'm not sure what God's going to do with us there and that opportunity, but if that's something that immediately like the Spirit's like, whoa, like that's something I could help with. They need help, okay? So be thinking about that one. That's a big deal. And just remember as we talk about all these different ways to help out and serve, it's not first about the action, okay? It's about the heart. It's about the attitude. Okay, praise team, you guys can come on up. So as you think about that, I want you to just think about this idea, okay? That's the main point I want you to think about, is just go low. And I had written in my notes here for you to turn to your neighbor and say, go low, or I'm going to slap you in the face, but we're not going to do that. I feel like that's a little too aggressive. So we're just going to leave it simple. We're going to leave it simple like this. But we do need some level of that kind of interaction, not the slap part, but we need the encouragement part. We need the encouragement part. We need to be challenging each other within the body to have this humble service that's one of our core values. Okay? You guys pray with me. God, help us. Help us with this kind of heart and this kind of attitude, that we would be humble servants in your kingdom, that we would just constantly be looking for ways to grow in service. Please check us through the discipline of the Spirit if we start stepping out of line in our attitude and our approach. May we be a body that is really committed to this, not that just gives it lip service and talks about it. And there's already so much evidence of this happening in our body, God, but let it grow. Let the Spirit just go crazy here in this aspect. And may we bring you glory in every step of that to honor you the way that you deserve. We love and lift you up in Jesus' name. Amen.